There are moments when the world feels louder than it should, not because voices are raised, but because everything seems to press inward at once. Thoughts overlap, expectations linger in the air, unspoken judgments drift close as if they are waiting to be noticed. In those moments, even stillness can feel crowded. You may be sitting quietly, yet something inside keeps listening for what they might say next, listening for signs of approval or disapproval, listening for a reason to explain yourself. And even without a single word spoken, the noise continues. It hums softly, but it never truly leaves. It is strange how silence can feel so full of questions, full of memories, full of the sense that something is being measured. You begin to notice how often your thoughts move outward, reaching for reassurance, how often the mind prepares answers to questions that were never asked. Why do we do that? Why does the heart tense when nothing is happening? Sometimes it is not anger that disturbs the quiet, but anticipation, the feeling that you are about to be seen, or perhaps overlooked, that you are about to be understood or quietly misunderstood. And in that waiting, the body holds its breath without realizing it. The shoulders tighten, the chest grows heavy, the mind rehearses small defenses just in case. They may not even be present, yet their presence is felt. A distant awareness of eyes that once watched, words that once landed too sharply, expressions that linger longer than they should. Even in solitude, those impressions remain, shaping the way you sit with yourself. There is a gentle sadness in this kind of noise, not a dramatic one, but a soft weariness, the kind that comes from being alert for too long, from carrying the sense that you must respond, prove, or clarify, even when no one has asked you to. It makes rest difficult. It makes silence feel unfinished. And yet, within this discomfort, there is something quietly important, a small moment of noticing. You begin to realize that the noise is not coming from the world itself, but from the way it echoes inside you. The world has not changed, but your attention has been pulled outward again and again, until it forgot how to return. Have you noticed how rare it is to simply sit without preparing, without shaping yourself into something easier to explain? There is a vulnerability in that, a tenderness that feels exposed. And so the mind fills the space, thinking it is protecting you, but protection can become a burden. Constant readiness can become a kind of unrest. The heart grows tired of always standing at the door, listening for footsteps that may never arrive. In this quiet beginning, nothing needs to be resolved. Nothing needs to be answered. This is not the moment for understanding everything. It is only a moment for noticing what it feels like when the world grows loud inside you, even in silence. There is no failure in feeling this way. It is simply the first sign that something deeper is waiting to be acknowledged, a part of you that longs for a quieter strength, a steadier place to stand. So the story begins here, not with action and not with response, but with awareness, with the soft realization that silence is not empty and noise is not always outside. And as you sit with this understanding, gently and without judgment, the noise begins to reveal its true nature. It is not an enemy. It is a signal, a quiet invitation to look inward and to listen differently. After the noise is noticed, there is often a deeper feeling beneath it, a heaviness that does not speak, yet asks to be felt. It settles quietly, like something unfinished. These are the feelings that were never given a voice, not because they were unimportant, but because they felt too fragile to release. Silence holds them carefully. It keeps them close, pressed gently against the heart. At first, this feels safe. Words can change shape once spoken. They can be misunderstood or taken away. So the feelings remain inside, waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right understanding, waiting for a safety that never seems to fully arrive. There is a tension in this waiting, a subtle ache that grows when emotions stay folded inward for too long. You may feel it as restlessness or as a quiet pressure behind the eyes, or as a tiredness that sleep does not seem to reach. These feelings do not demand attention. They simply endure. Sometimes you wonder if keeping them inside is strength. Sometimes you wonder if it is fear. The answer is rarely clear. Often, it is both. There is courage in restraint, but there is also weight, and the body remembers what the voice does not release. They may speak easily, they may express without hesitation, and watching that can deepen the silence inside you, not because you lack words, but because your words feel heavier. Each one carries meaning, history, consequence. You choose silence not out of emptiness, but out of care. Yet care has its cost. When feelings are not shared, they begin to shape the inner landscape. They whisper to the mind late at night. They appear in moments of stillness. They ask quiet questions. Was it right to stay silent? Would it have changed anything? Would you feel lighter now? There is no clear answer, only the awareness that something remains unresolved, not broken but waiting to be acknowledged without needing to be explained, waiting to be felt without being judged. This is the difficult part of silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of everything unspoken. Emotions do not disappear when ignored. They soften, perhaps, but they stay. They settle into the spaces between thoughts. They become part of the way you breathe. You may notice how carefully you move around the how you avoid certain memories, how you pause before certain thoughts. It is not weakness, it is sensitivity, a deep awareness of how much feeling lives beneath the surface. And yet within this discomfort, there is something honest. These unsaid feelings reveal how deeply you care. They show that you do not speak lightly, that you understand the weight words can carry, that you sense the power in holding something gently rather than releasing it too quickly. Still, the heart grows tired of holding everything alone. Even quiet strength needs rest. Even discipline needs compassion. Silence, when filled only with restraint, can begin to feel like a closed room. So you sit with it. You do not rush to open the door. You simply notice the feeling of being inside, the warmth, the tightness, the quiet hum of emotions asking to be seen, if only by you. In this space, there is no need to decide anything, no need to speak or stay silent. This is not a moment of choice. It is a moment of presence, of allowing the weight to be felt without adding more weight to it. The silence here is not empty, but it is heavy. And acknowledging that heaviness is the first gentle step toward understanding it, not fixing it, not releasing it, simply recognizing that it exists. And sometimes that is enough for now. There is a quiet kind of pain that comes from being seen only in pieces, from having your stillness mistaken for absence, from having your restraint mistaken for emptiness. They look at what you do not say and decide what it must mean. And their conclusions settle around you without ever asking if they are true. You feel it in small moments, a glance that lingers too briefly, a tone that assumes you are unaffected, an ease with which they speak over the space you leave behind. It is not cruelty most of the time. It is simply distance. The distance between what you carry and what they are willing to notice. You begin to realize that silence invites interpretation, and rarely does it invite patience. They often fill the quiet with their own stories, stories that are simpler than the truth, stories that require less effort to understand. In those stories, you are calm because you do not care. You are quiet because you have nothing to say. You are still because you are unchanged. But inside, something tightens, not with anger, but with a soft disbelief. Is it really so hard to imagine depth without display? Is it really so uncomfortable for them to sit with what is not explained? There is a loneliness in this misunderstanding, not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from being unseen while present. You are there fully, listening, feeling, weighing each moment with care, and yet it feels as though they are responding to a shadow instead of you. At times, you wonder if speaking would correct it, if offering a few carefully chosen words would reshape their understanding. But another part of you hesitates, because once spoken, whoa, RDS no longer belong to you. They become something else in the space between people. They can be twisted, softened, sharpened, or forgotten. So you remain quiet, not because you agree with what they assume, but because you know how easily truth can be lost when it is offered to ears that are not ready. This choice brings its own ache, the ache of holding clarity inside while confusion lives outside. They may call you distant, or passive, or unaffected. They may mistake your patience for weakness. And each time this happens, there is a moment where you feel the urge to correct them, to step forward and say, "This is not who I am." But that moment passes, not because the desire fades, but because you sense something deeper, a recognition that being understood by everyone is not possible, that some people only see what confirms their expectations, and fighting that can drain more than it gives. Still, it hurts. It hurts to be misread when you have been so careful, when your silence was meant as respect, not withdrawal, when your calm was earned through effort, not indifference. These misunderstandings press softly against the heart again and again. You begin to carry them quietly, like stones in your pocket, not heavy enough to stop you from walking, but heavy enough to remind you they are there. And with each step, you learn how to adjust your balance. In this space, something subtle begins to change. You stop expecting them to see what you have not shown. You stop waiting for recognition that may never arrive. And in that letting go, there is a quiet relief, not approval, not resolution, just a soft release from the need to be fully known by those who only look briefly. You start to understand that being misunderstood is not always a failure of expression. Sometimes it is simply the result of depth meeting distance, of silence meeting impatience, of inner work meeting outer assumptions. And as this understanding settles in, the pain does not disappear, but it changes shape. It becomes less sharp, less personal, more like a quiet truth you carry with you. You realize then that being unseen does not mean you are invisible. It only means that your life is happening at a depth not everyone is prepared to reach. And that knowing, though gentle, begins to steady you. There comes a moment that does not announce itself. It does not arrive with clarity or certainty. It slips in quietly, almost unnoticed, like a pause between breaths. At first, nothing seems different. The world remains the same. They remain the same. And yet, something inside begins to shift. It often begins with tiredness, not of effort, but of tension. A gentle weariness from holding so much alertness inside, from constantly measuring what to say or whether to say anything at all, from carrying the weight of being misunderstood without letting it show. And in that tiredness, the heart softens. You find yourself slowing down, listening more closely, not to what is happening undue, but to what is happening within. The mind grows quieter, not because answers have been found, but because the questions have changed. Instead of asking how to be seen, you begin to wonder what it feels like to see yourself clearly. This pause feels unfamiliar. There is no urgency in it, no need to decide or defend, just a gentle noticing of your own presence, of how much effort has been spent on the outside and how little attention has been given to the quiet life within. You begin to realize that much of your discomfort did not come from silence itself, but from what you hoped silence would achieve. You hoped it would protect you. You hoped it would be understood. You hoped it would be respected. And when those hopes were unmet, the silence felt heavy. But what if silence was never meant to carry those expectations? What if it was not a message to others, but a shelter for yourself? This thought does not arrive fully formed. It settles slowly like dust in still air. You sit with it, you let it rest, and the more you allow it to remain, the more something loosens inside. You notice how often your attention has been turned outward, toward reactions, interpretations, imagined responses, how rarely it has been allowed to rest within your own experience, without explanation or defense. This realization is quiet, but it is profound. There is a difference between silence that waits to be noticed and silence that is simply present. One strains, the other breathes, and for the first time, you sense the possibility of the second, a silence that does not lean forward, that does not listen for footsteps, that does not prepare answers, a silence that exists for its own sake. In this pause, you begin to feel your own boundaries more clearly, not as walls, but as edges, places where your responsibility ends and another's understanding begins. You see how often you tried to carry both. There is relief in setting some of that weight down, in allowing others to misunderstand without immediately reaching to correct them. Not because their view is right, but because your peace no longer depends on their clarity. This is not a dramatic realization. It does not bring excitement or certainty. It brings stillness, a small, steady calm that feels earned rather than given. It feels like coming home after being away for a long time and finding the room unchanged, quietly waiting. You may notice how your breathing deepens here, how the body responds before the mind fully understands. Shoulders ease, the jaw softens, the heart beats without rushing. In this space, you do not feel the need to prove your depth. You know it is there. You have lived it. You have carried it, and that knowing does not require an audience. You realize that inner power does not announce itself. It does not argue. It does not demand recognition. It settles quietly, like a root growing downward rather than a branch reaching outward. This pause does not end the story. Ply changes its direction from outward effort to inward alignment, from reaction to awareness, from waiting to be understood to understanding yourself. And as you sit in this realization, gently and without hurry, you sense that something important has begun, not something visible, not something loud, but something real. There is a moment when a response rises naturally, almost automatically. A thought forms, a feeling follows. The body prepares to move, to speak, to explain. This moment arrives quietly, but it carries urgency. It asks to be acted upon. And yet, now something is different. You notice the moment before the response, a small space that once went unseen. In that space there is a choice, though it does not feel like one at first. It feels more like a breath held gently rather than released too quickly. Not answering does not feel passive here. It feels intentional, a soft refusal to be pulled outward, a decision to remain where you are, steady and present, rather than stepping into familiar patterns of reaction. The urge to respond is still there. It has not disappeared. It presses lightly, reminding you of old habits, of times when silence felt like surrender. But this silence is different. It does not come from fear. It comes from awareness. You begin to understand that every reaction carries energy. It asks for something in return: attention, validation, control. And sometimes offering that energy feels like giving away a part of yourself that you see cannot easily reclaim. So you let the moment pass, not with effort, but with restraint. You allow the words to remain unspoken. You allow the feelings to settle instead of spilling outward. This is not suppression. Suppression is tight. It strains. This feels spacious. The emotion is still present, but it is no longer in charge. You observe it without feeding it. You let it move through you without becoming your voice. They may notice the silence, or they may not. Either way, something important has happened inside. You have honored your own boundary without needing to announce it. There is a quiet dignity in this. Not the kind that demands respect, but the kind that respects itself. It does not need to be seen to exist. It is felt first, privately. You may feel a slight discomfort at first, a sense of unfinished business. The mind may return to the moment again and again, wondering if you should have said more. This is natural. Old habits do not dissolve instantly. But beneath that discomfort there is a deeper calm, a steadiness that was not there before. You realize that not every moment requires your participation. Not every invitation deserves your presence. Silence becomes a form of care. Care for your time, care for your energy, care for the parts of you that are still tender, still growing. You begin to see how often you once responded out of obligation rather than truth. Now, truth feels quieter. It does not rush, it waits to be invited. And when it is not, it remains with you, intact. There is strength in this kind of silence, though it does not feel forceful. It feels grounded, like standing firmly without pushing against anything, like knowing where you end and allowing the world to move as it will. You notice how the body responds. There is less tension in holding back than there was in pushing forward, less strain in staying present than in trying to control the outcome. This silence is not meant to teach anyone a lesson. It is not a strategy. It is simply an expression of self-respect, a quiet acknowledgement that your inner world deserves care. They may continue as before. They may fill the quiet with their own words, their own interpretations, and you let them. Not because you agree, but because you no longer need to interrupt your own peace to correct them. Over time, this choice becomes easier. The space before reaction grows more familiar. You begin to trust it. You begin to trust yourself within it. And in that trust, you find something steady. A sense that you are no longer reacting to life, but meeting it calmly on your own terms. The silence holds you now rather than you holding it. And within that holding, you feel quietly whole. At first, the change is subtle, almost easy to miss. There is no clear moment where you can say that growth has begun. It happens quietly beneath the surface in places no one else can see. It happens in the moments when you choose not to react, and nothing dramatic follows. You begin to notice how time feels different. Moments that once felt sharp now pass more softly. The space you give yourself becomes familiar. Silence no longer feels like something you are enduring. It feels like something you are learning from. Restraint teaches slowly. It does not offer quick rewards. There is no immediate sense of victory. Often there is no response at all. And yet, something inside you steadies with each choice to remain calm. You start to sense how much strength it takes to stay still when movement is easier, how much courage it takes to remain quiet when words are ready. This strength does not announce itself. It does not seek confirmation. It simply grows. There are moments when doubt returns, when you wonder if your silence is making you smaller, if holding back is causing you to disappear. These thoughts come gently, like old habits knocking at the door. You acknowledge them, and you let them pass. What you begin to understand is that restraint does not erase you. It defines you. It shapes the way you move through the world with care and intention. You are no longer scattered by every sound. You are no longer pulled apart by every expectation. The inner space you have protected begins to fill with something steady, patience perhaps, or clarity, or a quiet confidence that does not rely on being seen. Whatever it is, it feels earned. You notice how your reactions soften even before they form. The body relaxes sooner. The mind listens longer. You no longer bracing yourself against what might happen. You are present with what is. They may still misunderstand. They may still assume. But their opinions no longer settle as deeply. They touch the surface and move on. They do not linger inside you the way they once did. This is growth through restraint, not growth that reaches outward, but growth that settles inward, like roots deepening quietly beneath the ground, unseen but essential. You begin to trust this process. Trust that not everything needs to be answered. Trust that your worth is not measured by your response. Trust that silence, when chosen with care, can be a form of wisdom. There is a gentleness that comes with this trust. You become kinder with yourself, more patient with your own feelings. You no longer rush to correct or defend every thought that arises. You let things unfold. You may notice how peace begins to appear in unexpected moments, in the way you breathe, in the way you listen, in the way you let a moment end without carrying it forward. This peace is not constant. It comes and goes. But each time it appears, it stays a little longer. And each time it leaves, you know it can return. Restraint teaches you that power does not always move outward. Sometimes it rests, sometimes it observes, sometimes it simply allows. And in allowing, you grow, not louder, not sharper, but deeper. You begin to carry yourself differently, with less urgency, with more presence, with an understanding that you do not need to meet every challenge head on to remain whole. This kind of growth does not seek recognition. It does not need applause. It is content to exist quietly, shaping your inner world one moment at a time. And as you sit with this understanding, you realize that something important has taken root, something that will continue to grow slowly and steadily as long as you allow yourself the space to remain still. There is no moment when the world stops to acknowledge what has changed inside you, no signal, no pause. Life continues in its ordinary rhythm, untouched by the quiet work you have been doing. And at first this can feel unsettling. You may notice how little seems different on the outside. They speak as they always have. Situations unfold in familiar ways. The silence you have chosen does not alter the shape of events. It does not redirect attention toward you. It simply exists. There is a subtle disappointment in this realization, a soft question that arises without bitterness. Was this meant to feel more visible? Was something supposed to shift around you now that something has shifted within? But as you sit with that question, another understanding begins to form. The absence of recognition is not a failure. It is a sign of where the work has been taking place. What has grown in you was never meant to be measured by reaction. It was meant to bring balance. And balance does not announce itself. It stabilizes quietly. You begin to notice how you move. Rough moments with less resistance. How you are no longer pulled as easily into tension. How situations that once demanded a response now pass without leaving a mark. This is not indifference. It is alignment. You are not detached from life. You are simply no longer wrestling with it. You meet moments as they come, without needing them to confirm your strength. There is something grounding about this, a feeling of standing evenly without leaning too far forward or too far back. You are present but not exposed, open but not unguarded. You realize that applause was never the point. Approval fades quickly, recognition shifts, but balance stays with you. It follows you into quiet moments. It steadies you when nothing is happening. They may never know what it took to arrive here. They may never notice how much effort you once spent reacting, explaining, holding yourself together. And that is all right. What matters now is that you feel whole within yourself. Not elevated, not diminished, simply whole. There is peace in this kind of completeness. Not excitement, but ease. Not certainty, but steadiness. You are no longer waiting for something to happen before you can rest. You notice how your inner world feels less crowded. Thoughts come and go without colliding. Emotions rise and settle without demanding immediate action. There is space between them now. This space is not empty. It is balanced. You carry your experiences without being defined by them. You allow moments to end without dragging them forward. You have learned quietly how to let life move without gripping it too tightly. This is where strength becomes subtle. It does not push. It does not resist. It holds its shape gently, even when pressure returns. And pressure will return. It always does. But now, when it arrives, it meets something steady instead of something tense. You begin to trust this steadiness. Trust that you do not need to be seen to remain solid. Trust that your inner alignment is enough even when the outside remains unchanged. There is no triumph here, no sense of arrival, only a quiet understanding that you are no longer searching for balance. You are living within it, and that changes how everything feels. Moments no longer need to be managed so carefully. You are less concerned with how you appear and more attuned to how you feel, less reactive, more centered. This calm does not separate you from others. It simply anchors you more deeply within yourself. As the day settles and the world grows quiet again, you find that you are not waiting for anything. You are not rehearsing words. You are not preparing explanations. You are simply here, balanced, unnoticed, at peace. There is a quiet steadiness that settles when nothing is left to prove. It does not arrive suddenly. It grows slowly through many moments of choosing stillness over noise, presence over reaction. And one day you realize it has been there for a while. You feel it in the way you stand. Within yourself, not rigid, not guarded, simply upright. There is no tension in holding your place. No urgency to move, no need to explain why you are here. Silence no longer feels like something you are doing. It feels like something you are living in. It surrounds you gently, not as an absence, but as a companion. It holds your thoughts without pressing them forward. It allows your feelings to exist without demanding they be shared. You notice how little effort this takes now. What once required restraint now feels natural. The pause before reaction is no longer forced. It is simply there. A calm space where you can breathe, observe, and let moments pass. They may still speak, they may still misunderstand. The world continues as it always has. But it no longer enters you in the same way. It does not shake your center. It does not pull you out of yourself. You have learned where your strength lives, not in words, not in responses, not in being seen. It lives in your ability to remain whole, even when nothing around you confirms it. There is a deep sense of self-respect in this, not pride, but care. Care for your inner world, care for your energy, care for the quiet truth that does not need to be spoken to remain real. You are no longer waiting for permission to be at peace. You are no longer measuring yourself against reactions. You are no longer bracing for misunderstanding. You stand still, and that stillness holds. There is something gentle about this ending. It does not feel like an ending at all, more like a settling, like placing something down after carrying it for a long time. The weight was familiar, but you no longer need it. You may look back and see how much effort it took to arrive here, how many moments you chose silence when speaking felt easier, how many times you stayed present when reacting felt justified. But these memories do not stir regret. They rest quietly like markers along a path already walked. Now there is only this moment, this calm awareness of being enough without display, of existing fully without performance. You feel connected to yourself in a way that does not waver. Even when emotions rise, they do not overtake you. Even when thoughts wander, they return gently. You trust yourself to remain grounded. This is not a victory. It is a balance, a quiet agreement between who you are and how you move through the world. You do not need to announce it. You do not need to protect it fiercely. It protects itself through your attention, your patience, your restraint. As the quiet deepens, you notice how little is required of you now. Just presence, just honesty with yourself, just the willingness to remain still when stillness feels right. There is no instruction here, no lesson to pass on, only a calm understanding that silence, when chosen with care, becomes a source of strength. And so you remain, standing still, standing whole, not waiting, not reacting, simply here,